Hey guys, tonight we are going deep. Not just deep into history, but deep inside one of the most iconic structures ever built by human hands. Imagine, for a moment, that instead of being tucked safely in your bed, you are something small, something furry, something mousy. And your home? The Great Pyramid of Giza, smack dab in the middle of its construction phase, maybe around 4,500 years ago. Yeah, you're about to spend the next hour or so living vicariously as a tiny rodent in ancient Egypt. It's going to be dusty, probably terrifying, and let's be honest, you probably won't survive the day in real life. But hey, that's what we're here for, right? Living dangerously from the comfort of your duvet. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always cool to see where our little history bubble reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The darkness is absolute. Not the gentle gray-tinged dark of a cloudy night sky, but the deep, impenetrable blackness of being miles away from any light source, encased in tons upon tons of stone. You are here, deep inside what will one day be called the Great Pyramid, though right now it's more like a very, very large construction site with a few surprisingly finished internal bits. You're curled up in a tiny crevice, a perfect mouse-sized hideout between two massive limestone blocks. It's cool here, blissfully so, compared to the baking heat that will soon assault the outside world. The air is thick with the smell of ancient dust, dry stone, and something else, something like old sweat and dry reed mats from where the human workers sprawl out during breaks. Your tiny whiskers twitch. There it is. Not a sound inside the stone yet, but a vibration, a subtle shift in the air pressure, the first whisper of the world outside waking up. It's a feeling you've come to recognize. Soon, the first rays of the sun will start to peek over the eastern horizon, turning the distant, sleepy Nile into a ribbon of gold, and the human world will roar to life. But for now, you have these last few moments of quiet, just you and the echoes of the void around you. You uncurl cautiously, your tiny claws finding purchase on the rough stone. Your nose wrinkles, testing the air. No immediate danger, no slithering scales, no silent wings, and most importantly, no sniffing wet noses attached to pointy teeth. Good. Survival 101, check the local predator forecast first. You stretch, a surprisingly long movement for such a small creature, feeling the stiffness ease in your tiny limbs. Time to forage. Navigating the darkness is easy for you. Your whiskers are your map, your nose your guide. You scurry along the edge of the stone block, keeping low, feeling the textures change beneath your paws. It's a complex, three-dimensional world of sheer surfaces, tiny ledges, and hidden gaps. This isn't a natural cave system, it's painstakingly crafted, yet even these perfect angles and flat planes have imperfections, chips, and cracks where a mouse can find refuge. As you move closer to one of the narrow shafts that angle upwards, you begin to hear it, faint at first, like the distant hum of an angry beetle, but growing steadily. Voices. Human voices. Shouting commands, singing rhythmic chants to coordinate movement, the thud of heavy things hitting the ground. The builders are arriving. Thousands of them. It's a common misconception, perpetuated by old movies and some less than accurate historical takes, that the pyramids were built by slaves. That's actually not the mainstream historical view anymore. Most historians agree now that the workforce for these massive projects was largely composed of skilled laborers, craftsmen, and temporary workers, likely farmers obligated by a sort of labor tax during the Nile's flood season when their fields were underwater. They were housed, fed, and even paid, though payment probably wasn't in cash as we know it, but in things like grain, beer, and other provisions. Imagine getting paid in beer. Though given the back-breaking work they were doing, maybe it wasn't so bad. probably beat getting paid in Excel spreadsheets. You reach the edge of a particularly large block near one of the access corridors. The noise is much louder here, echoing slightly through the stone. You can make out individual shouts now, the creak of wooden levers, the groan of ropes under tension. Sunlight isn't visible yet from this angle, but the air feels different, warmer, carrying the faint scent of charcoal fires starting up outside the pyramid walls, where breakfast is being prepared for the workers. You press yourself flat against the stone, your gray fur blending perfectly with the dusty surface. The first humans are entering the lower levels. You see their feet first, rough sandals, dusty ankles wrapped in simple linen kilts. They move with purpose, carrying tools, copper chisels, wooden mallets, lengths of rope. They chat amongst themselves, their language a rapid-fire stream of sounds you don't understand, but the tone is clear, business time. Early shift. Probably complaining about having to wake up before the sun. Some things never change, right? These early birds are likely the foremen, the stone masons checking the previous day's work, or the logistics guys getting tools ready. You watch their sandals shuffle past your hiding spot. They are colossal, like walking mountains from your perspective. The sheer scale of everything around you is overwhelming. A single human foot is bigger than your entire body. A dropped tool could crush you instantly. This is not a forgiving environment for a tiny mouse. Survival here requires constant vigilance, speed, and an intimate knowledge of the terrain, knowing every crack, every shadow, every escape route. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians used ramps, levers, or a combination of methods to lift the colossal stones into place. Some theories involve straight ramps, some winding ramps, some even suggest internal ramps. It's a massive puzzle, trying to figure out the logistics with the tools and knowledge they had. Imagine trying to lift a stone block heavier than a modern truck using just ropes and muscle. It boggles the mind. You wait until the initial rush of early workers passes your immediate vicinity. The sounds begin to spread throughout the structure's lower levels as more people arrive. The light outside is strengthening. You can sense it even here in the gloom, a subtle change in the quality of the shadows. The pyramid is waking up, and with it, the endless, noisy activity of its builders. Your stomach gives a little rumble. All this historical observation is making you hungry. Time to find some breakfast crumbs. The sounds are closer now, and with them, something else, a faint, subtle change in the quality of the darkness around you. It's like the black is just slightly less absolute in certain directions, a faint softening at the edges of the shadows. You know this means the sun is fully above the horizon now, its light beginning to assault the massive structure from the outside. And in a place like this, built layer by layer from the ground up, there are still openings, gaps, and access points where the light can find purchase. You scurry towards one such opening, a narrow slot where a carefully placed block hasn't quite met its neighbor perfectly, leaving a sliver of a view outwards, or perhaps upwards towards a higher, unfinished section. As you peer through, bracing your tiny paws on the rough stone, you see it. Not the blinding light of the sun itself, but a shaft of illumination cutting diagonally through the gloom of the pyramid's interior. It's like a golden sword slicing through the darkness, and within that beam, a universe of tiny particles. Dust. Oh, the dust. It's everywhere. Centuries later, people will walk through these same passages and marvel at the lack of visible dust, but right now, during construction, this place is a swirling cloud of pulverized limestone. Every movement, a dropped tool, a shuffling foot, a block being dragged, sends plumes of it into the air. And in the light shaft, you see it all. Millions upon millions of tiny motes, glittering like microscopic diamonds, dancing and swirling in the air currents. It's beautiful in a strange, chaotic way, but also incredibly dry and irritating. You have to shake your head occasionally to clear your tiny nostrils. Good thing mice don't have allergies, or you'd be in for a rough few decades. This dust is the byproduct of creation, the fine powder chipped off the massive blocks as they are quarried, shaped, and fitted. It settles on every surface, coating the stone, the ropes, the workers' clothes, and yes, your own little gray fur. You leave tiny footprints in it as you move, little trails that will be erased by the next gust of wind or the next passing sandal. More shafts of light appear as the sun climbs higher and hits different angles of the pyramid's unfinished exterior or finds its way down through vent shafts and access corridors. They crisscross the interior, illuminating patches of floor and wall, turning the air into a glittering, golden haze. You watch the dust motes drift, slow and mesmerizing, a silent ballet in the sunbeams. It's a surprisingly peaceful sight amidst the growing cacophony of the human world. Speaking of which, the noise is escalating. The early trickle of workers has become a steady stream, flowing into the lower levels and spreading out across the different sections of the build. You hear the rhythmic chipping of chisels against stone. The masons are back at work, refining surfaces or carving inscriptions. You hear the low, guttural chants of men coordinating their efforts as they push or pull something heavy. The occasional sharp crack tells you a tool has been dropped or broken. The air is no longer just dust and stale stone. Now there are new smells, the sharp tang of human sweat, the oily scent of ropes, the slightly acrid smell of burning charcoal from the breakfast fires outside, faint whispers of roasting grain or flatbread. It's the smell of intense, coordinated human effort. You cautiously emerge from your crevice, staying close to the shadows near the wall. The light is getting stronger now, illuminating the roughness of the stone blocks, the lines where they meet, the small imperfections that are invisible in the dark. From your low perspective, the sheer size of these blocks is even more apparent. They are monumental, each one a small mountain range from a mouse's eye view. Mainstream historical fact: the average weight of the stone blocks used to build the Great Pyramid is estimated to be around 2.5 tons, which is roughly the weight of 2 modern cars. But some blocks, like the granite slabs in the King's Chamber, weigh significantly more, upwards of 50 to 80 tons. Moving those required some serious ancient engineering muscle, and probably a lot of shouting. You see the workers moving around in the illuminated spaces. Their movements are efficient, practiced. They wear simple loincloths or short kilts, their bodies lean and muscular from the constant labor. Many are barefoot, their soles tough and calloused against the rough stone. They carry water skins, tools, baskets. Some are clearing debris, more dust and small chips of stone, sweeping it towards chutes or carrying it outside. A quirky tidbit about ancient Egyptian beliefs: the Egyptians believed in Ma'at, a concept of cosmic balance, truth, justice, and order. Everything they did, from building pyramids to conducting daily life, was ideally aligned with maintaining Ma'at. Building a perfect, eternal resting place for the pharaoh was a huge act of maintaining cosmic order, ensuring the pharaoh's successful transition to the afterlife, which in turn helped maintain the balance of the world for everyone else. So, these guys weren't just building a tomb, they were participating in a massive, spiritual construction project. No pressure, right? You watch a group of men struggling to position a block. They strain against thick ropes, their muscles bulging. An overseer stands nearby, watching, occasionally shouting instructions or encouragement. You can hear their grunts of effort, the rhythmic pull and release as they try to maneuver the stone. It's hard work, brutal work, done under the relentless Egyptian sun, or in this case, the relentless dust and gloom inside the structure. Historians still argue whether the pyramid builders had ramps that went straight up one face, or if they built a ramp that spiraled around the pyramid as it grew taller, or if they used a combination of methods. We know they used ramps from depictions found elsewhere, but the exact configuration for this massive pyramid remains a subject of intense debate among archaeologists and engineers. Trying to reconstruct their methods from the archaeological evidence is like trying to rebuild a demolished building from the dust on the floor. As the morning progresses, the pyramid fills with more and more people and noise. The lower chambers and passages that are already completed become routes for moving materials or taking breaks. The air grows warmer, drier. The dust motes dance faster in the strengthening light shafts, agitated by the increased activity. For you, it means more potential danger, but also more potential opportunity. Where there are humans, there are often overlooked scraps. Your tiny nose twitches again. Time to venture out and see what the dawn has brought in the way of edible goodies. The thought of a dropped piece of grain is a powerful motivator, pulling you further out of your safe haven and into the dusty, illuminated world of the working pyramid. The morning is in full swing now. The sounds of construction are a constant thrumming presence around you, the steady chip of stone dressing, the resonant thud of mallets on wood or stone, the distant, rhythmic chants of hauling teams. The air, thick with dust, is also growing warmer, even inside the stone structure, as the sheer number of bodies and the effort they expend radiate heat. The shafts of light slicing through the interior are now brighter, revealing more of the rough-hewn surfaces and the busy human activity. Your primary motivation right now is simple: sustenance. All this historical observation doesn't fill a mouse-sized stomach. You need to find food. And in a place teeming with thousands of human workers, there are bound to be leftovers. The most likely place? Where the humans take their breaks and eat. You scurry along a narrow ledge, keeping low, hugging the wall. You navigate around abandoned tools, a heavy wooden mallet here, a length of worn rope there, a discarded copper chisel glinting in a shaft of light. The stone is rough beneath your paws, sometimes smooth where a block has been particularly well dressed, sometimes jagged where a chip has been recently struck off. You follow your nose, which is a surprisingly effective guide in this environment. It picks up the faint, tantalizing scent of food, grains, maybe some dried fruit, the faint smell of cooked legumes or flatbread. It's stronger in one direction, drawing you towards a more open area, one of the lower chambers or perhaps a wider corridor used as a common space. As you approach, the sounds of human voices become clearer. They are louder here, more relaxed than the shouts of work. You hear laughter, conversation, the smacking sounds of people eating. Peeking around the edge of a large stone block, you see them. A group of workers is gathered, sitting on the ground, leaning against the cool stone walls. They are taking their mid-morning break, their breakfast spread out on simple reed mats or directly on the clean-swept stone floor. There are bowls of grain porridge, piles of flatbread, maybe some dried fish or dates. They are eating with their hands, talking animatedly, sharing water from clay jars. This is your golden opportunity. Humans are messy eaters. They drop crumbs. They spill things. They leave bits behind. You just need to be patient, fast, and invisible. You wait, watching from your hidden vantage point. Their feet are bare or clad in simple sandals. Their clothes are dusty, sweat-stained linen. Their faces, many tanned and lined from years under the sun, show a mix of exhaustion and camaraderie. This isn't the glamorous Egypt of pharaohs and gold, this is the working-class Egypt, fueled by grain and beer and sheer willpower. Mainstream historical fact: the diet of the average Egyptian worker, especially those on large state projects like pyramid building, was primarily based on bread and beer. They consumed vast quantities of both. Beer wasn't just for fun. It was a source of calories and relatively safer to drink than water from unreliable sources. Grain was the staple, baked into bread, which was often dense and gritty due to the stone grinding process, not great for their teeth in the long run, a quirky tidbit for later. As you watch, a worker finishes a piece of bread and brushes crumbs from his hands. Success. Tiny, golden brown specks scatter on the stone floor. You mark the spot. Another worker spills a few precious grains from a bowl. More targets. You need to time this right. The humans are still present, and while they might ignore an insect or a lizard, a scurrying mouse would definitely attract attention, possibly unwelcome attention from a bored worker's foot, or worse, alert one of the ever-present sight cats. Yes, cats. Ancient Egyptians revered cats, saw them as protectors against vermin and associated with the goddess Batet. They were common in homes and granaries to control pests. And where there are humans in grain, there are often cats. You've seen them, sleek, silent hunters, patrolling the edges of the site, sometimes even venturing into the lower levels of the pyramid itself, drawn by the promise of a meal, like you. Avoiding them is paramount to your continued existence. A quirky or fringe tidbit: while cats were revered, there's also evidence they were deliberately mummified and sometimes even sacrificed. It's a complex relationship, adoration mixed with practical use and religious ritual. You gauge the distances, the movements of the workers, the shadows. One group seems to be finishing up, gathering their things. This is your chance. The moment they stand up and move away, even slightly, you dart out from your hiding spot. You are a tiny gray blur against the gray stone. You reach the scattered crumbs in seconds, your tiny paws scrabbling, your nose and mouth working furiously. You shove as many crumbs as you can into your cheek pouches, or gobble them down instantly. You grab a dropped grain of wheat, a prize indeed, and turn to retreat. Just as you do, a shadow falls over you. You freeze. Not a human shadow, different. You look up, your heart pounding in your tiny chest. It's a cat. A sleek, sandy-colored feline, its eyes narrowed, fixed right on you. It's low to the ground, tail twitching slightly. Survival instinct kicks in. Forget the grain. You bolt. Not back the way you came, the cat is too close. You dart under the edge of the nearest reed mat, praying it's thick enough to hide you. You hear the thud of the cat's paws as it pounces, the rustle of the mat as it lands. You squeeze into the narrow space between the mat and the rough stone floor, pushing yourself as flat as possible. The cat sniffs at the edge of the mat, a low growl rumbling in its chest. You can hear its claws scrabbling against the stone just inches from where you hide. It's frustrating for the cat, you're just out of reach. You stay absolutely still, your tiny heart hammering against your ribs. Every muscle is tense, ready to spring if the cat finds a way under the mat. Historians still argue whether these sight cats were wild strays, domesticated pets brought by the workers, or perhaps even deliberately kept on site by the pyramid administration for pest control. Given the Egyptians' reverence for cats, it's likely a mix, but their exact status and management on a massive project like this isn't fully clear from the records. Were they salaried employees with a grain ration? Probably not, but it's fun to imagine. The cat continues to sniff and scratch for a moment, then, with an irritated flick of its tail, it moves on, distracted perhaps by another noise or the hope of easier prey elsewhere. You hear its padded footsteps receding. Slowly, cautiously, you ease out from under the mat. The coast is clear. You made it. Shaken, but intact, and with a few precious crumbs salvaged from the near disaster. Lesson learned: breakfast scavenging is dangerous work, but necessary. You quickly grab the dropped grain of wheat you abandoned in your panic. It's still there. And this time, make a strategic retreat back towards the more predictable shadows of the unfinished passages. The morning meal rush might be over, but the day's work, and its attendant dangers and opportunities, is just beginning. Okay, you've had your near-death breakfast experience. Adrenaline's still singing a little in your tiny mouse veins. But the world outside your current shadowy refuge continues its relentless, noisy operation. The sounds of the construction site haven't just resumed, they've intensified. This is the core business of the pyramid, the movement and placement of colossal stones. You position yourself near an opening or a vantage point that overlooks one of the access ramps or a lower level where the really big stuff is happening. From here, you get a front row seat to the engineering marvel unfolding around you. The main activity you witness is the hauling of those massive stone blocks you encountered earlier. You see teams of workers, large teams, dozens of men, straining against thick, woven ropes. They are pulling rough-hewn blocks, many still bearing the marks of the quarry. The blocks are enormous, dwarfing the men who struggle to move them. They are likely being dragged on wooden sledges. You can hear the groaning protest of the wood against the stone ground, or perhaps over a prepared surface designed to reduce friction. There's a rhythmic aspect to their effort, often accompanied by those low, guttural chants or the beat of a drum to keep everyone pulling in unison. It's a powerful, visceral sound, the sound of hundreds of human bodies working together against the inertia of sheer weight. Heave! Ho! Heave! Ho! Or whatever the ancient Egyptian equivalent was. You watch as a team maneuvers a block up a ramp. The incline is steep, the effort immense. Men at the front pull, others at the back push with wooden levers, or perhaps work to position logs or some kind of rolling mechanism underneath the sledge. The overseers are present, shouting encouragement, correcting movements, ensuring the pace is maintained. You can see the strain on the workers' faces, the sweat glistening on their skin even from a distance. Mainstream historical fact: it's widely accepted that wooden sledges were the primary method for transporting these massive stones over land. They were likely pulled over a prepared surface that might have been lubricated with water or milk to reduce friction, though the specifics of that surface and lubricant are still debated. The Egyptians also used ramps to get the blocks up the pyramid levels. The stone itself is a character in this drama. It's mostly local limestone from the Giza Plateau, yellowish or light gray, relatively soft to quarry but incredibly heavy in bulk. For special sections like the King's Chamber or the casing stones, they used finer limestone from Tura, across the Nile, or hard, dark granite from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. Moving those Aswan granite blocks required even more effort and sophisticated river transport. Imagine that commute. You see the stone gangs, the organized groups of workers responsible for hauling. They likely had names, perhaps based on their village of origin, or maybe something more symbolic, like the Companions of Menkor or the Drunkards of Jedefra. Okay, maybe not that last one, but you get the idea. This wasn't a free-for-all, it was a highly organized operation, requiring precise coordination. A quirky tidbit about the workforce: evidence suggests the workers were organized into divisions, possibly named after parts of a pharaoh's body or concepts like strength and endurance. These divisions were then broken down into smaller gangs, maybe around 20 men each. This structured organization would have been essential for managing thousands of laborers. It was like a massive, ancient corporate hierarchy, but instead of moving data, they were moving mountains. You watch as one team successfully gets a block to its destination point on a higher level. There's a brief moment of shared relief among the men. Then the skilled masons move in, checking the fit, preparing the surfaces. The precision with which these ancient builders fitted massive, irregularly shaped blocks together is astonishing. There's often no mortar holding them, just the sheer weight and the careful, tight fit. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians achieved this precise fitting primarily through incredibly skilled manual labor and simple tools, or if they had some techniques or devices we don't fully understand that allowed for such accuracy on a massive scale. How did they achieve such flatness and squareness on blocks weighing tons? It's one of the enduring mysteries of pyramid construction. Was it just patience and copper chisels? Or something more? The sounds of the stone gangs continue throughout the day. The creak of ropes, the rhythmic chanting, the shouts of the overseers, the deep thud as a block is finally settled into place. From your perspective, it's like watching colossal, slow-moving giants wrestle with pieces of the earth. You feel the vibrations travel through the stone beneath your paws with every heavy movement. You have to be incredibly careful around these areas. A dropped rope, a slipping block, or simply being in the path of a moving sledge would be instantly fatal. Your tiny life could be extinguished in a second by the forces involved in this massive undertaking. You hug the walls, use smaller, less trafficked passages, and stay alert for the telltale sounds of heavy movement. You see the overseers, distinct in their slightly cleaner linen and often carrying sticks or whips, symbols of their authority, used perhaps more for directing than necessarily for physical punishment, although life was certainly harsh. They stride among the workers, maintaining order and pace. The sunlight streaming in through the opening shifts angle as the sun moves across the sky, changing the patterns of light and shadow on the dusty stone. The air grows thicker with the smell of dust and effort. The sounds of the stone gangs are the constant, grinding heartbeat of the pyramid's construction. For you, it's a constant reminder of the scale and danger of your environment. But where there's activity, there's also the potential for something. Maybe a dropped tool, a piece of rope fiber that could be useful nesting material, or perhaps another overlooked food scrap in the chaos. You stay hidden, you watch, and you wait. The great stone dance continues around you. The sounds persist, a low, powerful symphony of human exertion and geological resistance. The groaning of wood under impossible weight, the snap and strain of taut ropes, the rhythmic, percussive thudding as levers are employed or chocks are hammered into place. You are still observing the stone gangs, watching their relentless battle against gravity and friction. From your low vantage point, nestled in a shadowed crack in the wall near a major internal ramp, the scene is both awe-inspiring and utterly terrifying. The blocks themselves are not smoothly finished like the outer casing stones might eventually be. Many are still rough, just basic cubes or rectangles cut from the bedrock or transported from the quarry. You can see the marks of the copper chisels on their surfaces, the places where they were pried from the earth. They are imperfect, yet their mass is undeniable. When one moves, even slightly, the vibration travels through the very stone you're perched on. It's a deep, unsettling rumble that vibrates up through your tiny paws. You watch a gang preparing to move a particularly large piece. The overseer is there, directing the placement of the wooden sledges, checking the ropes. The men position themselves, grasping the thick, fibrous ropes made from papyrus or flax. You can see the individual strands woven together, thick as your body. From here, you can even make out the texture of the rope, the way it digs into their hands, calloused and strong. The air is thick with the smell of their effort, sweat, dust, and the faint, sweet smell of the lubricant they might be using on the ground or the sledge runners. Some theories suggest water, others milk, others even oil. Whatever it is, it adds another layer to the complex olfactory map of this place. They begin to pull. Slowly, agonizingly, the huge block begins to shift. The wooden sledge groans, a sound like an old tree protesting a strong wind. The ropes tighten, stretching taut. The men lean into the pull, their bodies angled, their feet braced against the stone floor. You hear their collective grunt, the start of their chant. It's not melodic, but functional, designed to synchronize their efforts. Hop! Hop! Or something similar. Mainstream historical fact: the Egyptians possessed a range of simple but effective tools made primarily from copper, wood, and stone. Copper chisels were used for quarrying and shaping the relatively soft limestone, while harder dolerite or granite hammers were used for tougher stones. They also used wooden levers, ropes, and possibly rollers or rocker systems in conjunction with sledges and ramps. It's amazing what you can do with leverage and enough friends. You watch, fascinated and wary, as the massive block inches forward. It's a slow, grinding process. Every small gain is hard-won. The overseer walks alongside, his voice sharp, encouraging, or correcting. You can almost feel the collective will of the group focused on this single, monumental task. It's a physical manifestation of the pharaoh's power, the ability to command such resources and manpower to build something so enduring. A quirky tidbit related to the stone movement: there's a relief from a later period tomb, dating to the reign of Thutmose III, around 1473 to 1458 BC, depicting the transport of a colossal statue on a sledge. This relief shows dozens of men pulling the sledge and one man at the front pouring liquid, often interpreted as water or milk, onto the path in front of it to reduce friction. While this isn't a contemporary depiction of pyramid building, it strongly suggests this technique was known and used by the Egyptians for moving heavy loads. Maybe they had a dedicated milk pourer role? Beats being a dust mote dancer. The dust kicked up by the moving block is incredible. It billows around the base of the sledge, momentarily obscuring the lower part of the men's legs. The air gets even thicker, drier. You have to duck your head and wait for the worst of the cloud to settle or drift away. Historians still argue whether the Egyptians used simple straight ramps extending from the base, or whether they developed more complex, perhaps spiraling or internal ramps, as the pyramid grew higher. The engineering challenge of building a long enough and strong enough ramp to reach the top of the finished pyramid, over 146 meters high, is immense, and different theories propose different solutions based on archaeological traces and logical deduction. It's a giant game of architectural clue, but instead of finding Colonel Mustard in the conservatory, you're trying to figure out if it was a straight ramp with a wooden sledge. The stone gang finally gets the block position correctly. There's a moment of rest as they unhitch the ropes. Other workers, perhaps masons, move in to check the fit against the adjacent blocks. You hear their discussions, their assessment of the work. More chipping begins, smaller, more precise sounds, as they make final adjustments. You stay hidden, a tiny, unnoticed observer in this world of giants and stone mountains. The constant activity of the stone gangs is the rhythm of the pyramid's growth. Each block placed is another step towards completion, another layer added to this artificial mountain. For you, it's a dangerous ballet of mass and motion that you must constantly avoid. But it also stirs the dust, creates new hiding places as blocks are fitted, and might, just might, lead to something edible being dropped in the process. The possibility of sustenance keeps you watching, even as the sheer scale of the work makes your tiny world feel infinitesimally small. The sun is higher now, the light shafts narrower and more intense, the air even drier and warmer. The day, and its challenges, continues to unfold. The midday sun is beating down on the Giza plateau now. Even inside the pyramid's lower levels, where the air is cooler than outside, you feel the change. The shafts of light are sharper, more defined, cutting through the dusty air with intense brilliance. The sounds of the stone gangs continue, a constant, grinding backdrop, but other sounds weave in and out, the chatter of workers, the rhythmic splash of water being poured, maybe that lubricant you smelled earlier, maybe just for drinking, the call of a bird flying past an opening high above. For you, this time of day brings increased risk. More activity means more people, and more people mean more watchful eyes and more potential for accidental squishing. It also means the predators are likely more active, taking advantage of the human presence which often attracts smaller prey. You are currently navigating a relatively quiet passage, a finished section maybe, or a corridor leading to storerooms or workshops. It's darker here, cooler, the air slightly less thick with dust than the main work areas. You move cautiously, your whiskers constantly testing the air currents for unfamiliar scents. Your primary concern, beyond the obvious risk of being stepped on by a human mountain, is the local wildlife that shares this colossal structure with you. We already talked about the cats during breakfast. They are a constant threat, silent and deadly hunters. But they aren't the only ones. Snakes are another danger. Cobras, vipers, they are native to Egypt and would absolutely be drawn to a large structure like this, which offers shelter and potential prey like mice and lizards. They move silently, their scales rasping softly against the stone, almost undetectable until they are too close. You rely heavily on your sense of smell and vibration detection to avoid these cold-blooded predators. Imagine rounding a corner in the dark and coming face to face with a spitting cobra. Your tiny heart does a little flip just thinking about it. Then there are the birds of prey. Falcons and kites are common in Egypt. While they might not venture deep inside the finished parts of the pyramid, they would certainly hunt around the exterior, perched on unfinished ledges or soaring overhead, their sharp eyes scanning for movement on the ground or in the open sections. If you venture too close to an opening, you risk becoming a fast food meal for a feathered predator. And, of course, the humans themselves, or specifically, certain humans. The overseers and foremen. They aren't looking to eat you, but they are constantly scanning the site, ensuring everything is in order, that work is progressing as it should. Any unusual movement, any small disruption, might catch their eye. While they might not actively hunt a mouse, a supervisor noticing a pest issue might lead to less hospitable conditions for the local rodent population. Plus, they carry those sticks. Best to give them a wide berth. You are moving carefully along a narrow ledge above a busier area, using the shadows for cover. The ledge is dusty, uneven, but it offers a good view without putting you directly in the path of foot traffic. Below you, workers are carrying baskets of rubble towards a chute that leads outside. Their voices drift up, a steady murmur. Suddenly, you freeze. Your whiskers twitch. You catch a scent, faint but distinct. Cat. And it's close. You flatten yourself against the stone, trying to make yourself invisible. You listen intently. Padded footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Getting closer. It's exploring the passage below you. You can hear the soft pad of its paws on the dusty stone floor. It's sniffing the ground, likely following the scent trails of insects or other small creatures. You hold your breath, your tiny body rigid. You dare not move a muscle. Mainstream historical fact: cats were indeed highly valued in ancient Egypt, seen as protectors, especially of grain stores against rodents and snakes. They were often depicted in art and were sometimes even adorned with jewelry. Killing a cat, even accidentally, could result in severe punishment. So, while this cat is a predator to you, it holds a position of respect, perhaps even minor privilege, in the human world of the pyramid builders. It's probably better fed than you are. The cat's footsteps pause directly below you. You can hear its soft sniffs, its breath. Your heart is pounding so hard you're afraid it might give you away. You imagine its eyes, slit pupils scanning the shadows. Does it know you're here? Can it smell your fear? A quirky tidbit about ancient Egyptian pet keeping: while cats were common, Egyptians kept a variety of animals as pets, including dogs, monkeys, and even birds. Some of these pets were even buried with their owners. Imagine burying your hamster with you for eternity. Though maybe not as large or grand as a cat burial. The cat lets out a soft sound, a low chirp or meow, perhaps to itself, perhaps hoping to scare out potential prey. It stretches, its claws extending slightly and making a faint scratching sound against the stone. You wince internally. Historians still argue whether the cats on the pyramid site were truly domesticated in the modern sense, or more like semi-feral guardians encouraged to stay on the site through feeding and religious significance. Were they friendly mousers or aloof, pragmatic hunters using the human activity to their advantage? Their exact status is one of those fuzzy historical details. The cat moves on. You hear its footsteps recede down the passage. You wait a few more moments, making sure it's gone, before daring to unfreeze. You let out a silent, shaky breath. That was close. Too close. You carefully continue along the ledge, your senses on high alert. The dust motes still dance in the light shafts, beautiful and indifferent to your tiny dramas. The sounds of the stone gangs and human activity provide a constant, if sometimes irritating, background noise. But beneath it all, you are acutely aware of the quieter, more dangerous sounds, the potential rustle of scales, the silent pad of paws, the shadow of wings against an opening. Survival is a full-time job, requiring constant vigilance, especially during the bright, busy part of the day when everyone, predator and prey, is most active. You stick to the deepest shadows, the narrowest cracks, places where your small size is a distinct advantage, a shield against the many dangers of this monumental, man-made world. The middle of the day wears on. The sounds of the stone gangs are still the dominant force, the rhythmic pulse of construction, but the temperature inside the pyramid's stone heart is becoming noticeable. Even though you're shielded from the direct sun, the sheer thermal mass of the stone, coupled with the body heat of thousands of workers, makes the air warmer, drier, and feels slightly heavy. The dust is a constant presence, coating your fur, tickling your nose. This heat, combined with the constant threat of predators and humans, makes the unfinished, open areas less appealing. You crave the deeper, cooler, more stable parts of the structure. It's time to explore the labyrinth within. You seek out the entrances to the internal passages. These aren't the massive ramps or wide corridors used for hauling stone. These are narrower, more finished tunnels, places intended for the pharaoh's burial, for accessing chambers, for ventilation shafts, or perhaps for purposes we don't fully understand even today. You find an entrance to one such passage. It's a perfectly cut, rectangular opening in the stone wall. The air that flows out is cooler, carries a faint, different smell, less dust, more stale stone, perhaps the lingering scent of the original rock before the bulk of the construction enclosed it. It feels safer, quieter. You slip inside. Immediately, the light levels drop. This passage angles upwards or inwards, away from any external openings. The dust motes aren't dancing here, they settle slowly in the still air. The sounds of the construction outside become muted, distant echoes. It's a world of deep shadow and cool, smooth stone. Mainstream historical fact: the Great Pyramid contains a complex network of internal passages and chambers, including the descending passage, the ascending passage, the Grand Gallery, the Queen's Chamber, and the King's Chamber. These were not just empty spaces, they had specific functions related to the burial rituals and the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The precision with which these internal spaces were carved and aligned is remarkable. As you navigate the passage, the stone changes under your paws. It might be smooth limestone, precisely dressed and fitted. In other places, it could be the rougher, less finished rock of a passage still being excavated or widened. The air is heavy, silent except for the soft scuffing of your own tiny feet and the distant, almost inaudible sounds of the outside world. These passages are a different kind of environment. They are predictable in their structure, but unpredictable in their potential inhabitants. You are deep inside the stone now, far from the easy escape routes of the exterior. If you encounter danger here, a snake, perhaps, or even another mouse who sees you as a rival, escape is limited. You follow the passage as it angles upwards. The floor might be smooth, requiring more careful paw placement to avoid slipping on the dust. The walls are sheer, rising high above you, perfectly straight or perhaps slightly uneven depending on how finished this section is. The air feels stagnant, ancient. A quirky tidbit about the internal passages: some of the passages are incredibly narrow and low, clearly not designed for easy human movement, especially not for carrying heavy objects. This has led to speculation about their purpose. Perhaps they were symbolic, or used for specific ritualistic movements, or perhaps they simply reflect the practical constraints of excavating within a massive stone structure. Trying to squeeze through some of them sounds like a historical claustrophobe's worst nightmare. You come to a point where the passage opens slightly, perhaps an unfinished alcove or a junction with another shaft. You pause, listening. The silence is profound. broken only by the faint sound of your own breathing and the distant, muted thrum of activity far below or outside. This silence is both comforting and unnerving. Comforting because it means no immediate, obvious danger. Unnerving because danger can approach silently in these deep, quiet places. You continue your exploration. You might find small caches of debris left by the workers, chips of stone, maybe a lost tool, a piece of rope. These things can be useful. The stone chips might provide sharper edges for hiding. The rope fibers could be nesting material. Historians still argue whether all the internal passages and chambers we see today were part of the original plan, or if some represented changes in design during construction. For example, the Queen's Chamber and the passages leading to it seem to have been abandoned before completion, and its exact purpose is debated. It likely wasn't intended for a queen's burial. The internal layout holds clues to the evolution of the builder's intentions, but piecing together the full story is complex. You navigate around a pile of stone debris, carefully avoiding dislodging anything that might make a noise. Your tiny body moves with practiced ease through this artificial landscape. You know the feel of the stone, the subtle slopes of the passages. You might encounter insects in these deeper passages, beetles scurrying in the dust, perhaps a spider spinning a web in a corner. They are fellow inhabitants of this stone world, part of the small, quiet ecosystem that exists within the colossal human endeavor. They are potential food, or potential threats themselves depending on their size. The air changes again as you move deeper. It becomes even cooler, carries the scent of damp stone in some areas, where perhaps water has seeped in from somewhere high above or from condensation. Water is life in this dry environment, and finding a reliable source in these deep passages would be a significant discovery, though likely a rare one. You might reach a ventilation shaft, a narrow, perfectly square tunnel angling upwards. A faint breeze might flow down it, carrying the scent of the outside world, the desert air, perhaps even the distant smell of the Nile or human settlements. These shafts were likely crucial for providing fresh air to the workers carving the internal passages, but they also serve as potential highways or chimneys for smaller creatures like you. Exploring these dark passages is a necessity. They offer refuge, potential resources, and a different perspective on the pyramid structure. But they are also isolated, silent, and full of hidden dangers. You are a tiny explorer in a vast, artificial cave system, relying on your instincts and senses to navigate the silent, stone depths. The day's work continues outside, but in here, the world is slow, quiet, and ancient. You move deeper into the belly of the beast, searching for safety, sustenance, and maybe just a quiet corner away from the dust and the noise. As you navigate the quieter internal passages, the loud, rhythmic sounds of the stone gangs become a muted, distant hum. The air is cooler, the dust slightly less oppressive, though still present. You are in the deeper parts of the pyramid now, sections that might be closer to completion or dedicated to functions other than the brute force movement of stone. It's here, in these perhaps more sacred or finished spaces, that you might encounter a different kind of human activity, rituals. You are tucked away in a shadowed corner, a tiny indentation in the wall near a larger opening that seems to lead into a chamber of some sort. The air carries the faint, unfamiliar scent of incense, something sweet and smoky, very different from the smells of sweat and dust outside. Voices are audible from the chamber, lower now, more formal than the shouts and chats of the workers. They are chanting, singing, speaking in measured tones. You cautiously edge closer to the opening, peering into the chamber. It is dimly lit, perhaps by flickering oil lamps or torches placed in niches in the wall. The light is warm, casting long, dancing shadows. In the center of the chamber, a group of humans is gathered. They are dressed differently from the construction workers, cleaner linen, maybe some simple, unadorned white robes. These are likely priests or high-status officials. They are performing some kind of ceremony. You see them pouring libations from clay vessels, perhaps water or beer or milk. They are placing objects on a low altar or table, bowls of grain, loaves of bread, maybe pieces of dried meat or fruit. These are offerings. Mainstream historical fact: religious rituals and offerings were integral to ancient Egyptian life and especially important in major state projects like pyramid building. Sacrifices and offerings were made to the gods to ensure the success of the endeavor, the well-being of the pharaoh, and the maintenance of Ma'at, cosmic order. Priests played a vital role in these ceremonies, acting as intermediaries between the human world and the divine. The air in the chamber is thick with the scent of the offerings and the incense. It's a strange, alien smell to your mouse senses, but the presence of food is immediately registered. Those offerings represent potential sustenance, though accessing them in the presence of these quiet, focused humans would be incredibly risky. You watch as the priests perform their tasks with solemnity. They move with deliberate grace, their movements precise and practiced. Their chants are melodic in a way, though the meaning is lost to you. They might be invoking the gods, asking for blessings on the pyramid, the pharaoh, or the workers. They might be performing purification rituals or consecrating certain parts of the structure. A quirky tidbit about Egyptian offerings: offerings weren't just symbolic. Much of the food and drink offered to the gods or the deceased in tombs and temples was later consumed by the priests or redistributed among the temple staff and sometimes even the workers. So, those bowls of grain might actually end up being eaten by humans later, though hopefully some stray crumbs escaped the process. It was a system that blended religious piety with practical economics. You see one of the priests place a small, intricately carved object on the altar. Perhaps an amulet or a figurine. The flickering light glints off it. The sounds of their chanting rise and fall. It's a world away from the gritty, noisy reality of the stone gangs, yet intrinsically linked, the spiritual fuel for the physical labor. Historians still argue about the specific types of rituals performed inside the pyramid during its construction, especially in chambers like the Queen's Chamber or the King's Chamber before they were sealed. Were these spaces consecrated as they were completed? Were there specific spells or inscriptions placed on the walls or within the blocks to protect the pharaoh or aid his passage to the afterlife? The lack of wall decorations in the finished burial chambers of the Great Pyramid, unlike later pyramids, makes this a subject of ongoing debate and interpretation based on other texts and practices. You stay hidden, a tiny, furry spy on a sacred moment. The intense focus of the humans in the chamber creates a sort of bubble of quiet intensity. You are acutely aware of your own vulnerability. Making any noise, startling one of them, would be disastrous. As the ceremony progresses, the air seems to grow heavier with the scents and the chanted words. You feel a strange sense of stillness, a pause in the relentless forward momentum of the construction. This is a moment of connection to something larger, something intangible that the humans believe in deeply. You might notice small details, the way the lamp smoke curls upwards, the texture of the linen robes, the focused expression on a priest's face. You might even see a tiny insect, drawn by the smell of the offerings, darting across the floor, another small life risking danger for a potential meal. The chanting reaches a crescendo, then slowly fades. The priests make final gestures, maybe extinguish a lamp. The silence that follows is different from the general quiet of the deep passages. It's a ritualistic silence, full of unspoken meaning. They begin to gather their vessels and objects, moving with the same slow, deliberate pace. You wait, absolutely still, until they have left the chamber and their footsteps fade down the passage. Only then do you cautiously emerge from your hiding spot. The scent of incense and offerings still lingers in the air. You dart into the chamber, your tiny nose twitching. Are there any crumbs? Any spilled drops? You scurry across the stone floor towards the altar. There, near where they placed the bowls, a few grains have scattered, a tiny prize. You snatch them up quickly, your instinct overriding the lingering scent of the strange human ceremony. You nibble on a dropped kernel, its taste a welcome contrast to the ever-present dust. The chamber is empty now, silent save for the distant murmur of the construction outside. The flickering lamps are gone, plunging the space back into deep shadow. You quickly retreat, the faint scent of incense following you. You've witnessed a glimpse into the spiritual world of the builders, a world of gods, rituals, and offerings. For you, it was a moment of strange smells, hushed sounds, and potential danger, but ultimately, also a source of a few precious calories. The pyramid is not just stone and labor, it is also faith and ceremony. And even in these sacred spaces, a mouse has to eat. The day continues to unfold within the massive stone structure. You've observed the builders arriving, witnessed the dusty sunrise, scavenged for breakfast scraps, and narrowly avoided a cat, watched the monumental task of the stone gangs, hidden from predators and overseers, explored the deep, silent passages, and even peeked in on a religious ritual. All of these experiences are filtered through your mouse senses, and one of the most pervasive is smell. The pyramid, even unfinished, is a complex tapestry of odors, constantly changing depending on your location, the time of day, and the ongoing activities. You are moving now through one of the busier internal corridors, perhaps a pathway used by workers moving between different sections, or leading towards one of the storage areas. The air here is a distinct blend of different scents, painting a vivid, if invisible, picture of the construction site. First and foremost, there is the stone itself. Limestone has a faint, mineral smell, especially when it's being worked or when it's damp. It's a dry, dusty scent, the fundamental odor of your world. Added to this is the smell of the fine dust kicked up by every movement. It has a distinct, slightly alkaline tang that gets into your nostrils and coats your fur. Then there are the organic smells associated with the human activity. Sweat. Oh, there is so much human sweat. After hours of hauling stone, chipping rock, and moving heavy loads in the Egyptian heat, the air is thick with the sharp, salty smell of exertion. It's not just the workers, the overseers, the priests, everyone adds to this pervasive human scent. It's a smell that signifies activity, life, and often, for you, potential danger. You also smell wood. Lots of wood. It's used for sledges, levers, ramps, tools, and scaffolding, if they used it, which is debated. The wood is likely dry and sun-baked, giving off a warm, slightly resinous scent. You might catch the smell of sawdust or splintered wood near a workshop area, or the faint, worn smell of well-used wooden tools. Rope is another distinct smell. The thick ropes made from papyrus or flax have a dry, fibrous odor, sometimes mixed with the faint, oily smell of whatever they might be treated with or what is rubbed off on them from their heavy use. Near the stone gangs, the smell of stretched and groaning rope is particularly strong. Mainstream historical fact: the Egyptians were master craftsmen in various materials, including wood and rope. They built sophisticated boats, furniture, and tools. The ropes used for pyramid building had to be incredibly strong and durable, and were likely made by twisting together fibers from plants like papyrus or flax. Interspersed with these core smells are others that drift in from outside or from specific activities. The faint, lingering smell of charcoal smoke from the morning fires near the workers' camps. The smell of food, grain, bread, maybe dried fish or legumes, especially near the break areas. The strange, sweet smell of incense from the ritual areas, a fleeting contrast to the industrial smells. And then there are the smells of the other inhabitants. The musky scent of cats, a warning smell that puts you instantly on high alert. The dry, scaly smell of lizards or perhaps the faint, unsettling scent of a snake. The earthy smell of insects. You are constantly processing this complex olfactory environment, using smells to identify potential food sources, navigate in the dark, and most importantly, detect danger. A quirky tidbit about ancient Egyptian scents: the Egyptians were very interested in smells and used perfumes, incenses, and fragrant oils extensively, both in daily life and in religious ceremonies. They imported aromatic resins like frankincense and myrrh. So, while the construction site might smell of sweat and stone, the people themselves, particularly those of higher status or involved in rituals, might carry the faint, exotic scent of expensive perfumes. Imagine encountering a priest who smells faintly of frankincense and ancient dust. You might come across a pile of debris and notice the sharp, metallic tang of copper dust, the byproduct of sharpening copper chisels. Or the slightly sulfurous smell of flint or harder stone being worked. Each material has its own signature scent. Historians still argue about the exact composition of some of the materials used, like the plaster or mortar, though minimal in the main courses of stone, or the glues or binders used in tools or furniture. Analyzing trace chemical residues can provide clues, but recreating the precise smells of ancient workshops or building sites is impossible. We can only infer based on the materials known to be used. As you move, you are constantly testing the air with your tiny nose, twitching your whiskers to feel the air currents that carry these scents. A sudden gust of wind through a ventilation shaft might bring a rush of desert air, dry and clean. A shift in human activity might introduce a new smell. Maybe someone has spilled a drink or dropped a piece of food. The smell of damp stone is particularly interesting. It might indicate a leak from above, perhaps rain that has seeped in, rare in the desert, but possible, or condensation. For a mouse in a dry environment, the smell of water is incredibly important, a potential lifesaver. You might spend time investigating such a scent, hoping to find a tiny puddle or a damp patch to drink from. The combined smells of the pyramid construction site create a unique and overwhelming sensory experience for a creature your size. It's a constant flow of information, telling you where the humans are, what they are doing, what materials they are using, and where the dangers and opportunities lie. You navigate this world primarily by scent and touch in the gloom, the noise often too confusing to rely on solely. The symphony of smells is the true language of the Great Pyramid under construction, and you are fluent in its ancient, dusty dialect. The pyramid's heart is a symphony of sounds and smells, but there's another layer of information constantly flowing through the structure, the human voices. From your perspective, these are just complex patterns of noise, a stream of sounds whose meaning is largely inaccessible to your mouse brain. Yet, the tone, volume, and rhythm of these voices can tell you a lot about what's happening around you. You are currently located in a spot where sounds carry well, perhaps near a central shaft or a larger internal space that echoes slightly. The general hum of the construction is always present, but interwoven with it are the distinct sounds of human conversation. You hear shouts, commands being given, warnings yelled across distances, rhythmic calls coordinating labor. These are loud, clear, purposeful sounds. When the shouting is intense and rapid, it usually signifies a period of focused, high-effort work, like positioning a particularly heavy block or dealing with a difficult task. It's a sound that signals peak activity and potential danger due to increased movement. You hear singing and chanting, those rhythmic sounds accompanying the hauling teams. These are lower, more resonant, designed to set a pace and unify effort. They can be almost hypnotic, a steady beat against the percussive sounds of stone and wood. This sound indicates where the main lifting or dragging work is occurring, another zone of high activity and risk. But you also hear conversation. Lower voices, murmuring, chatting during breaks or as groups of workers move between tasks. These are the sounds of daily life on the construction site. While the specific words are meaningless to you, the tone tells a story. You hear laughter, short bursts of amusement, a sign that things are relatively relaxed in that immediate vicinity. You hear complaining, grumbles, sighs, sounds of frustration. Some things truly are universal across millennia. You hear storytelling, gossip, the mundane sounds of people passing the time. Mainstream historical fact. We know a significant amount about the lives of the pyramid builders from archaeological discoveries at the Associated Workers' Village near Giza. Excavations have revealed housing, bakeries, breweries, medical facilities, and cemeteries. Inscriptions and papyri found there shed light on the organization of the workforce, their diet, their health issues, lots of bone fractures and arthritis, tough job, and even some of their personal letters and accounts. These findings paint a picture of a well-organized, albeit demanding, society supporting this massive project. You might be hidden near a corner where workers are taking a quick rest, leaning against the cool stone. You hear their voices, a low drone. From their gestures, the way they slump, you can infer their tiredness. From the animated tone of some, you can guess they are sharing a story or a joke. You don't understand the nuances of their language, which was an ancient form of Egyptian, distinct from later versions, but the universal language of fatigue or amusement is clear. A quirky tidbit about the workers' lives: the discovery of bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread daily, large-scale breweries, and even evidence of butchering vast amounts of cattle suggests the workers were not just adequately fed but relatively well provisioned, especially the skilled laborers. There's even evidence of primitive medical care, including bone setting and possibly even rudimentary surgery. It wasn't a picnic, but it wasn't necessarily a death sentence either. You might overhear a discussion between overseers or more skilled craftsmen. Their voices might be more clipped, authoritative, or focused on technical details. While you don't understand the discussion about angles or measurements or the best way to use a lever, the serious tone signals that something important is being discussed. This is another area to be wary of. Places where the higher-ups congregate mean more potential attention to detail, including details like small furry pests. Historians still argue whether the specific chants and songs used by the stone gangs had any ritualistic or magical purpose beyond simply coordinating effort, or if they were purely practical work songs like sea shanties. While ancient Egyptians incorporated magic and ritual into many aspects of life, the primary purpose of rhythmic chanting during heavy labor was almost certainly synchronization and motivation, but a deeper, symbolic layer isn't entirely ruled out by some scholars. Sometimes, the sounds of conversation might die down suddenly, replaced by a watchful silence. This could indicate the approach of a very high-ranking official, perhaps even the pharaoh himself, though he likely wouldn't be wandering the active construction site floors. Or it might simply mean the break is over and it's time to get back to work. That sudden cessation of noise is a signal for you to become extra vigilant. The echoing quality of the stone passages and chambers sometimes distorts the voices, making them sound strange and disembodied. A shout from down a long corridor can bounce and reverberate, making it hard to pinpoint its origin. This echoing environment is another challenge to navigating by sound. Listening to the humans, even without understanding their words, gives you a sense of the rhythm of their day, the ebb and flow of their activity. You can distinguish the focused intensity of work from the more relaxed chatter of a break. You can tell from the tone if something has gone wrong, shouts of alarm or frustration, or if a task has been successfully completed, cheers or celebratory calls. Your tiny ears are constantly processing this complex auditory landscape. It's a source of information, a constant reminder that you are sharing this monumental space with a very large, very busy, and potentially very dangerous species. You stay hidden, you listen, you learn the patterns of their sounds, and you use that knowledge to survive in their world. The human voices are just another layer of the pyramid's constant presence, shaping the environment you inhabit. The sounds of the Great Pyramid under construction are not just the human-made noises of work and conversation. The structure itself has a voice, a deep, resonant presence that permeates everything within its stone heart. As you spend your days and nights within this colossal edifice, you become attuned to the subtle, non-human sounds that make up its character. You are currently in a quiet, undisturbed passage, perhaps one of the higher levels that hasn't yet been fully enclosed or is waiting for its capstone. Here, away from the main throngs of workers, the other sounds become more noticeable. There's the sound of the stone itself. It expands and contracts slightly with the changes in temperature between day and night. This causes faint groans, clicks, and subtle shifts that resonate through the massive blocks. It's a sound like the giant structure is breathing, settling, adjusting to its own immense weight and the external environment. It's a very slow, very deep kind of sound, usually only noticeable in the quietest moments. You hear the wind. Even deep inside, through ventilation shafts or unfinished openings high above, the desert wind can find its way in. It whistles through narrow gaps, sighs down long passages, creating strange, sometimes mournful sounds that echo through the stone. On a particularly windy day outside, the pyramid can seem to hum or moan, its stone bones singing in the breeze. You hear water. Not the splash of water being used by the workers, but the faint, slow drip or seep of moisture somewhere within the structure. This could be condensation, or perhaps a tiny amount of groundwater that has found a path through the stone over time. The sound of dripping water in the silent darkness is amplified, each drop hitting the stone below with a clear, resonant plink. For you, this sound is incredibly important. It signals the potential presence of water, a vital resource in this dry place. Mainstream historical fact: the pyramids were built in a hyper-arid environment, but even in the desert, there can be limited groundwater or occasional rainfall that could affect the structure, especially over millennia. The precision of the engineering also needed to account for the massive weight and the settling of the structure, which could create small shifts and movements within the stone courses. You might hear the scuttling sounds of other small creatures that share your home. The click of beetle legs on stone, the soft rasp of a lizard's scales as it darts across a surface, perhaps even the faint rustle of another mouse in the distance. These are the sounds of the pyramid's internal ecosystem, the other lives that exist beneath the human layer. Sometimes, there are sudden, sharp sounds that make you jump, a chip of stone breaking off somewhere above, a small rock dislodged and tumbling down a shaft, a tool dropped accidentally far away, its clang echoing strangely. These sounds, while not directly threatening if they aren't near you, are startling and a reminder of the constant, dynamic nature of the environment. The pyramid is still being built, still being shaped, and its surfaces are not always stable. A quirky tidbit about the acoustics of ancient structures: large stone structures like pyramids and ancient temples can have fascinating acoustic properties, creating echoes, resonances, and strange sound phenomena. While it's unlikely the builders deliberately designed the acoustics for ritualistic purposes, though some speculate, the shapes and materials of the chambers and passages naturally create unique soundscapes. Imagine being a mouse and hearing your own tiny squeak amplified and distorted in a large, empty chamber. You spend a lot of time just listening to these background sounds of the pyramid. They tell you about the structure's stability, or lack thereof, the presence of water, the movement of air, and the location of other small lives. In the deep quiet of the night, when the humans are gone, these are the dominant sounds: the wind sighing, the stone settling, the drip of water, the scuttling of insects. It's like listening to the pyramid breathe in its sleep. Historians still argue about the function of certain features, like the narrow air shafts leading from the king's and queen's chambers. Were they purely for ventilation during construction? Were they symbolic passages for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars? Were they used in conjunction with specific rituals? Their precise purpose and how they were created, especially the long, angled shafts within the solid masonry, remain subjects of scholarly debate. And from a mouse's perspective, they are noisy wind tunnels that might carry interesting smells or the occasional unfortunate bug blown inwards. The sound of the workers, even when distant, is a constant reminder of the colossal force that is shaping this environment. But the sounds of the pyramid itself, the groans, the whispers of wind, the plinking water, are the sounds of the mountain you live in, its ancient, geological voice overlaid with the artificial sounds of its creation. You learn to distinguish between the two, to understand the language of the stone and the air as well as the patterns of the human noise. This symphony of sound, both human and structural, forms the auditory backdrop of your life within the Great Pyramid. You are a tiny listener in a world of echoes and stone whispers. Living inside a massive stone structure in the middle of the desert presents a constant challenge, one that is absolutely critical for survival: finding water. The air inside the pyramid, especially in the finished sections, is dry and still. The dust exacerbates the dryness. Unlike the humans who have clay jars and water skins brought to the site, you, as a tiny mouse, have to find your own sources. You spend a significant part of your day, particularly in the quieter moments or in the cooler, deeper passages, searching for water. Your acute sense of smell is your primary tool. You are constantly sniffing the air, searching for that faint, life-giving scent of moisture. Potential sources are few and far between in this artificial mountain. There are no natural springs or rivers inside the pyramid, obviously. The water has to come from somewhere else. One possibility is condensation. As temperatures fluctuate between the cooler nights and warmer days, moisture from the air, what little there is, can condense on the cooler stone surfaces, especially in deeper, less ventilated areas. You search for damp patches on the walls or floors, tiny glistening spots that might offer a few precious sips. These spots are rare and often dry up quickly once the temperature stabilizes. Another possibility is seepage. While the pyramid was designed to be a dry, sealed tomb, imperfections in the stone, cracks, or joints between blocks can allow tiny amounts of water to seep in over time, perhaps from residual moisture in the bedrock or extremely rare rainfall on the plateau. You might find a spot where water slowly, agonizingly slowly, drips from the ceiling or weeps from a wall joint. This is gold. A single, slow drip can be a lifeline, providing a consistent, if meager, source. You remember the sound of dripping water from earlier? That sound is like a beacon. Mainstream historical fact: while the Giza Plateau is very dry, there are underground water sources in the wider area. The Nile River is also relatively close. The builders would have needed reliable access to water for drinking, mixing mortar, where used, and potentially for lubrication in moving stones. This water would have been transported to the site, likely by human or animal power. You meticulously check the edges of walls, the corners of chambers, any indentation or rough patch in the stone that might trap a tiny amount of moisture. You follow the faintest scent of dampness, your whiskers brushing against the stone, your tiny tongue ready to lap up any moisture you find. Sometimes, you might find water near human activity. Spilled water from a dropped jar or a sloppy drinker during a break. This is risky, as it means being close to humans, but the reward of readily available water can outweigh the risk. You have to be quick, darting out to drink a few drops before disappearing back into the shadows. This kind of water is unreliable, appearing and disappearing depending on human carelessness. A quirky tidbit about water and ancient structures: the Egyptians had sophisticated water management systems, including canals and wells, even in relatively dry areas. Building and maintaining these systems was crucial for supporting large populations and projects. While the pyramid didn't have internal plumbing, the civilization that built it was highly adept at managing this vital resource. You learn the layout of the pyramid not just in terms of passages and chambers, but in terms of its hydration points. If you discover a reliable drip or damp patch, that spot becomes a critical node in your territory, a place you will return to again and again. These water sources are likely small, perhaps only enough for one tiny mouse, and you might even have to defend them from other small creatures. Historians still argue about the exact source of water used on the Giza Plateau during the pyramid building period. Was it primarily transported from the Nile via canals, Or were there local wells or cisterns that provided sufficient supply for such a massive workforce and their needs? Archaeological evidence supports the use of canals and possibly local wells, but the logistical scale of providing enough water for thousands of people and potentially for construction purposes is immense and still a subject of study. You might be exploring a passage and catch the very faint, distant smell of water. It could be coming from far away, perhaps from a lower level near where the workers store their water supplies, or even from outside the structure entirely, carried on a rare breeze through a shaft. Following such a scent could lead you on a long, potentially dangerous journey through unfamiliar territory, but the promise of water is a strong pull. Sometimes, you find dampness where you least expect it, perhaps near a pile of discarded organic material or in a poorly sealed joint. These are small victories, tiny reservoirs in a world of stone and dust. The search for water is a constant underlying pressure. You can go without food for a little while, but water is essential, especially in this hot, dry environment. Every discovery of moisture, no matter how small, feels like a major triumph. You lap up the precious drops, feeling your tiny body rehydrate, giving you the energy to continue your endless cycle of foraging, hiding, and surviving within the colossal stone monument. The knowledge of where the water is, or where it might be found, is as important as knowing where to find food or how to avoid a cat. It is the key to staying alive in the thirsty heart of the pyramid. You are not alone in the silent, dusty world within the Great Pyramid's stone shell. While the humans dominate the landscape with their colossal size and constant activity, a whole other ecosystem exists at your level, the realm of insects, arachnids, reptiles, and other small mammals. Encountering these fellow inhabitants is a regular occurrence, sometimes a threat, sometimes a potential meal, and sometimes just a reminder that life finds a way, even inside an artificial mountain of stone. You are scuttling along a narrow ledge high up in an internal passage, perhaps near one of the vent shafts where the air circulates slightly. Your whiskers twitch as you detect movement ahead. You freeze, melting into the shadows. It's a large beetle, a dark, hard-shelled creature, painstakingly navigating the rough stone surface. It moves with a mechanical clicking sound as its legs scrabble for purchase. For a mouse your size, a large beetle isn't necessarily a meal, but certain types of insects, like larvae or softer-bodied grubs you might find under debris, could be. This one is too big and too hard. You watch it pass, its antennae waving, seemingly oblivious to your presence. It's just another inhabitant, going about its beetle business. You might also encounter spiders. They spin their webs in quiet corners, between blocks, hoping to catch smaller insects drawn to the dust or faint air currents. Their webs are delicate silken traps in the gloom. You are usually too large to be caught, but running into a sticky web is irritating and can slow you down, making you vulnerable. You learn to spot the faint glint of silk in the shafts of light or feel the vibrations of a web through the stone. Lizards are another common resident. Quick, silent reptiles that dart across the stone surfaces, sunning themselves near openings or hunting insects in the cooler, deeper parts. They are predators themselves, feeding on insects, but a larger lizard might see a small mouse as a potential meal. Their scaly bodies blend well with the stone, making them difficult to spot. You rely on movement and scent to detect them. A sudden, rapid scuttling sound is often a lizard on the hunt or in flight. Mainstream historical fact: the desert environment surrounding the pyramids was, and still is, home to a variety of insects, arachnids, and reptiles adapted to arid conditions. Snakes, scorpions, beetles, spiders, and various lizards would all naturally inhabit rocky areas and structures, seeking shelter, prey, and water. You might occasionally encounter a snake. This is perhaps the most terrifying encounter for a small mouse. While not as common as insects or lizards inside the busy construction areas, snakes would seek out the quieter, cooler, deeper passages. Cobras or vipers are silent hunters. their movements a soft rasp against the stone. Detecting a snake before it detects you is crucial. Your survival depends on scent detection and an almost instinctual awareness of their presence. A close encounter would send you into a frantic panic for the nearest hiding spot. A quirky tidbit about Egyptian wildlife and mythology: many of these creatures appeared in Egyptian mythology and symbolism. Snakes could be protective, like the Urias cobra symbol on the pharaoh's crown, or malevolent, like the serpent Apophis, the enemy of the sun god Ra. Scarab beetles were symbols of rebirth and regeneration. Lizards and geckos also appear in art and beliefs. The animals sharing the pyramid weren't just physical presences, they had symbolic weight in the human world outside your immediate mouse concerns. And then there are other mice. You might encounter rivals for food or territory. Male mice are territorial and might fight. A mother mouse might aggressively defend her nest. These encounters are usually brief and tense, a standoff followed by one mouse retreating. You are a solitary creature for the most part, focused on your own survival, and other mice represent competition. Historians still argue about the degree of pest control actively employed by the Egyptians on the pyramid site beyond simply having cats present. Were there other deliberate measures taken to reduce rodent or insect populations that might damage supplies or structure? While not a primary focus of archaeological research, it's a practical question for managing such a large project, but specific details on ancient Egyptian mousetraps or bug sprays are scarce. You might find evidence of these other creatures even if you don't see them directly: a spider web, shed snake skin, insect exoskeletons, tiny droppings different from your own. These signs tell you who else shares this space and help you map the areas of potential danger or opportunity. One moment you might be carefully navigating a passage, the next you are startled by a lizard suddenly darting across your path. Or you might be sniffing for crumbs near a human area and catch the scent of a cat nearby, sending you scrambling for cover. Or in the deep quiet, you might hear the faint, terrifying sound of a snake moving somewhere in the darkness. Each encounter is a microdrama, a test of your instincts and knowledge of the environment. You are a tiny player in a miniature ecosystem operating within the colossal human-built world. You are both predator to insects and prey to cats, snakes, and possibly lizards. You navigate this complex web of life, constantly aware of the presence of others, relying on your speed, size, and knowledge of the pyramid's hidden spaces to survive their encounters. The stone walls hold many secrets, and many fellow inhabitants. As the sun begins its descent towards the western horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, though you only sense this indirectly through the quality of light in the few openings, the rhythm of the Great Pyramid construction site begins to change. The intense, focused energy of the day starts to wane. The shouts of the overseers become less frequent, the rhythmic chants of the stone gangs gradually diminish. The human world is preparing to shut down for the night. For you, this transition brings a different kind of atmosphere and a new set of opportunities and dangers. The constant, overwhelming presence of thousands of humans begins to recede, offering a sense of relief, but the coming darkness brings its own challenges. You position yourself near an opening that offers a view towards the west, or at least allows you to sense the changing light outside. You watch as the shafts of light penetrating the interior turn from bright gold to a warmer, softer orange, then lengthen and stretch as the sun drops lower. The dust motes, still present, glow like tiny embers in the slanted rays. You see the workers gathering their tools. Chisels are sheathed or put away, ropes coiled, sledges left in place for the next day. The steady stream of people moving through the passages changes direction, heading outwards towards the main exits and the workers' village. The voices become less about work and more about the end of the day, calls to colleagues, farewells, planning for the evening. Mainstream historical fact: the workers building the pyramids were housed in a large, purpose-built village near the site. This village provided accommodation, food, medical care, and likely social structures for the thousands of laborers. When the day's work was done, they didn't just disappear into the desert, they returned to their organized settlement. As the light fades, the sounds of heavy labor cease almost entirely. The rhythmic chipping stops, the loud hauling chants are gone. What remains is the sound of people leaving, footsteps shuffling on stone and dust, voices receding into the distance, the occasional clang of a gate or the closing of a temporary structure outside. The air begins to cool, and the dust starts to settle more noticeably. This period, as the humans are leaving but before total darkness descends, is a window of opportunity. With the main workforce gone, the immediate danger of being stepped on or disturbed is reduced. Areas that were too busy or too dangerous during the day become accessible. This is a good time to venture out and forage for overlooked scraps left behind by the departing workers. You carefully emerge from your hiding spot. The silence feels immense after the day's constant noise. You scurry across the floor, no longer needing to hug the walls quite as tightly. You head towards areas where workers took their breaks or ate their meals during the day. You find scattered crumbs, perhaps a dropped piece of grain, a forgotten date pit with a little fruit still clinging to it, or even a tiny spill of beer that has dried into a sticky patch. These are precious finds, the edible residue of the human presence. You work quickly, gathering what you can, storing it in your cheek pouches to take back to a safer spot. A quirky tidbit about ancient Egyptian food: the Egyptians ate a variety of foods besides bread and beer, including lentils, beans, onions, garlic, fish from the Nile, and various fruits like dates, figs, and grapes. Meat, especially beef and poultry, was likely less common for the average worker but might have been part of rations for skilled laborers or special occasions. Your diet as a mouse on the site could be surprisingly varied if you were lucky. You have to be quick, because while the human workers are leaving, other dangers might become more active as dusk approaches. Predators like owls or other nocturnal birds might start hunting around the exterior openings. Snakes might become more active in the cooling air, venturing out from their hiding places. And the site cats, who might have been loafing in the heat during the day, might now be motivated to hunt. You are a tiny shadow moving through the growing gloom, darting from one potential scavenging spot to another. The large, silent blocks loom around you, darker now as the external light diminishes. The feeling of the pyramid changes. It feels less like a bustling construction site and more like a vast, empty monument, waiting for the night. Historians still argue about the specifics of the security arrangements at the pyramid site during construction. Were there guards posted overnight? What measures were taken to prevent theft or vandalism, especially in a place that held valuable tools and materials? While common sense suggests some form of security, the exact nature of overnight guarding within the structure itself is not clearly detailed in surviving records. So, while the main workforce is gone, the pyramid might not be entirely empty of humans in authority. As the last rays of sun fade from the sky outside, the interior of the pyramid plunges back into deep, almost absolute darkness. The few lingering sounds of human departure disappear. The vast structure becomes silent, save for the sounds you are now most attuned to, the sounds of the pyramid itself settling, the wind whispering through openings, and the quiet movements of its non-human inhabitants, including yourself. You retreat to your safe spot, your cheek pouches perhaps a little fuller than before. The day's intense activity is over. The period of human dominance has ended, and the pyramid is now yours and the other nocturnal creatures' domain. But the darkness holds its own mysteries and potential dangers. The long night within the stone mountain stretches ahead. The last faint glow of the sun has vanished from the western sky, and the deep, profound darkness of the pyramid has fully asserted itself. It's not just the absence of light, it's a weighty, palpable darkness, thick enough to feel like a physical presence. The sounds of the human world, which dominated the daylight hours, are now almost completely gone, replaced by a different kind of silence, a silence that is not empty, but filled with subtle, ancient noises. You are deep within the structure now, curled up in a safe, hidden crevice between blocks. The stone around you is cooler than it was during the peak of the day, slowly radiating away the heat it absorbed. The air is still. The dust motes you saw dancing in the sunbeams hours ago have settled, coating every surface in a fine, uniform layer. In this deep quiet, the pyramid begins to speak in its own voice. You hear the slow, deep groans and clicks of the stone as it contracts in the cooling night air. It's like the vast monument is sighing, settling under its own colossal weight after the stresses of the day's construction. These sounds are subtle, felt more than heard, vibrations transmitted through the solid rock. The wind, which was just a whisper during the day's noise, is now more audible. It sighs through the narrow ventilation shafts that angle upwards, creating a low, mournful sound that echoes down the passages. It whistles through cracks and unfinished openings high above, carrying the scent of the cool desert night air inwards. It's a lonely, haunting sound, the breath of the desert moving through the stone lungs of the pyramid. Mainstream historical fact: the precision with which the pyramid's stones were cut and fitted allowed it to stand for millennia, resisting earthquakes and the ravages of time, in part because the weight of the blocks themselves created immense pressure and stability. However, even such massive structures experience minor shifts and movements due to temperature changes, ground settlement, and the shear forces involved. The sounds of settling are a real, albeit slow and gradual, process. And then there is the water drip you might have found earlier. In the daytime noise, it might have been lost, but now, in the deep silence, that tiny, rhythmic plink of a single drop hitting the stone floor somewhere in the darkness is amplified, a clear and distinct sound in the quiet. It's a sound that represents a vital resource, a point of life in this dry, artificial world. The night is also when the pyramid's other inhabitants become more active. The nocturnal creatures that hid from the daytime heat and the human activity now venture out. You hear the increased rustling of insects, beetles, maybe scorpions, moving through the dust. You might hear the soft, quick skitter of lizards that are active at night. And you are more active too. With the humans gone, larger areas of the pyramid become accessible for foraging and exploration. You can venture out into the wider corridors, the more open chambers, the places that were too dangerous during the day. Your whiskers guide you in the absolute darkness, feeling the texture of the stone, the presence of obstacles. Your nose is on high alert, searching for food scraps, the scent of water, or the warning scent of predators. The predators are different at night, or simply more motivated. The cats, who might have slept through the heat, are now on the prowl, their padded footsteps silent on the dusty stone. Owls might hunt around the exterior openings, their silent wings a potential shadow of death if you venture too close to the outside world. Snakes, if they are present, are also more active in the cooler night air. A quirky tidbit: while domestic cats were revered, there were also wild cat species in ancient Egypt, like the African wildcat, which is believed to be an ancestor of the domestic cat. These wilder felines would certainly have inhabited the desert edges and rocky outcrops, and might have ventured onto the pyramid site at night, potentially even entering the structure in search of prey. You wouldn't want to run into one of those guys. Your senses are heightened in the darkness. Your hearing picks up the slightest sound, your nose the faintest scent. Every little noise in the night, a distant click, a whisper of wind, the scuttling of an insect, makes you pause and assess for danger. The silence is punctuated by these small sounds, creating a tense, watchful atmosphere. You might explore a section that was buzzing with human activity just hours ago. You scurry across the spot where a stone gang was working, searching for any dropped bits of food they might have missed. The dust is thick here, disturbed by the day's labor. You might find a tiny piece of dried grain, a crumb of bread, a date seed. Each find is a small victory. Historians still argue whether there was any light inside the pyramid during construction at night. While oil lamps or torches were used during the day to illuminate internal passages being worked on, it's unlikely the entire structure was lit up at night. Any security patrols or essential overnight activities would likely use portable light sources, leaving most of the interior in absolute darkness, creating the perfect environment for nocturnal creatures like you. Trying to work or even navigate inside these unlit passages would have been incredibly challenging for humans. You might venture towards one of the ritual chambers you observed during the day. The scent of incense might still linger faintly. In the darkness, these spaces feel different, perhaps colder, more silent, imbued with the lingering atmosphere of the ceremonies performed within them. You might risk a quick sweep for offerings, knowing the risk, but the potential reward of undisturbed food is tempting. The night is a time for necessary activities, foraging, drinking from any water sources you've found, exploring new areas made accessible by the human absence, and reinforcing or finding new hiding spots. But it is also a time of heightened vulnerability to nocturnal predators. You are constantly balancing the need to find resources with the need to stay safe in the dark. As the hours pass, the silence might deepen further. Even the sounds of settling stone might become less frequent. The wind might die down. The night inside the pyramid is long and slow, a timeless void of stone and darkness. You retreat to your main safe haven, perhaps with a belly slightly fuller than before, or with a piece of grain tucked away for later. Curled in your crevice, you listen to the sounds of the deep night, the faint, ancient voice of the pyramid itself, the quiet movements of the other creatures that share your home. The danger of the human giants is temporarily gone, but the darkness holds its own, more subtle threats. You rest, but you remain alert, your tiny senses tuned to the pulse of the stone mountain in the night. The long wait until dawn begins. The night has reached its deepest point within the pyramid. The silence is broken only by the most fundamental sounds, the slow, almost geological sounds of the stone, the distant sighing of the wind, the quiet scuttling of your fellow nocturnal inhabitants. The human world is asleep, or at least absent from these dark, dusty passages. The dangers of the day, the colossal feat, the watchful overseers, the bustling activity, are temporarily gone. You have finished your foraging for the night, perhaps securing a few precious crumbs or a single, life-sustaining drop of water. Your tiny body is weary from the day's constant vigilance and movement. It's time to rest, to retreat to your safe haven and wait for the inevitable return of the dawn and the human world. You make your way back to your preferred hiding spot. It's a small, snug crevice between two massive, perfectly fitted limestone blocks, perhaps high up in a less visited passage or deep within a finished chamber. It's a place you've chosen carefully, small enough that larger predators can't reach you, hidden enough to be overlooked by patrolling cats or stray human eyes, should any be present overnight, and relatively sheltered from the wind and dust. It's your little piece of home within this monumental, artificial mountain. You squeeze into the crevice, feeling the cool, rough stone against your fur. It's cramped, but secure. You turn around a few times, settling yourself into a comfortable position, your nose tucked into your body. You might nibble on a crumb you carried back, savoring the meager meal in the darkness and silence. Mainstream historical fact: the core of the Great Pyramid is constructed from roughly cut limestone blocks quarried locally on the Giza Plateau. However, the inner chambers and passages, particularly the King's Chamber, are lined with much harder, polished granite brought from Aswan, hundreds of miles away. The precision with which these different materials were incorporated into the structure is a testament to the builder's skill. Your crevice might be in local limestone, or perhaps nestled against a cold, hard granite block in a more finished area. As you settle, your tiny mind, driven by instinct and the experiences of the day, processes the world around you. You recall the sounds of the stone gangs, the sight of the dancing dust motes in the sunbeams, the tantalizing smell of human food, the terrifying shadow of a cat, the cool air of the deep passages, the strange sense of incense from the ritual. It's been a day of challenges and small victories, a microcosm of survival within a colossal undertaking. You feel the vastness of the stone structure surrounding you. Tons upon tons of rock above, below, and on all sides. You are just a tiny speck within this immense, silent mass. The pyramid feels ancient, even now, in its unfinished state. It feels solid, enduring, built to last for eternity, a concept you grasp not intellectually, but through the sheer, unchanging presence of the stone. A quirky tidbit related to materials: some of the granite blocks used in the king's chamber ceiling weigh an estimated 50 to 80 tons each. How the Egyptians lifted and positioned these incredibly heavy, hard stones within the structure is one of the most debated aspects of pyramid construction. Ramps, levers, complex pulley systems. Though complex pulleys are generally thought to be a later invention, the theories abound. Imagine having to work with materials that heavy. Makes moving your furniture seem easy. You drift towards sleep, your breathing slowing, your tiny body relaxing after the day's tension. But even in rest, your senses remain partially alert. Your ears are still attuned to the subtle sounds of the night, the faint groans of the stone, the whisper of wind, the scuttling of an insect nearby. Your nose still processes the ambient sense. Survival instinct is deeply ingrained. Historians still argue whether the finished internal chambers were intentionally designed to have specific acoustic properties or alignments with celestial bodies. While some researchers propose theories about sound resonance or astronomical alignments in the king's chamber or the air shafts, others interpret these features primarily through their practical or symbolic function related to burial rituals and the pharaoh's journey to the afterlife. The debates continue over the deeper, perhaps hidden meanings behind the pyramid's internal architecture. As you rest, your tiny brain might process images from the day: the colossal feet of the humans, the glittering dust in the light, the smooth curve of a clay pot, the sharp angle of a stone block. These are the elements of your world, the stage upon which your daily struggle for existence plays out. You are a creature of instinct, not conscious planning for the distant future. But there is an anticipation for what the next day will bring. The return of the light, the return of the noise, the return of the opportunities, scraps, and the dangers: cats, feet. The cycle is predictable. Dawn will come, the humans will return, and the work on the great stone mountain will resume. You are just a tiny, unnoticed part of this colossal undertaking, living in the spaces left behind, surviving on the edges of the human world. The pharaoh for whom this tomb is being built is a concept far beyond your comprehension. The gods they worship are unknown to you. Their grand plans for eternity mean nothing to your immediate need for food, water, and safety. Your world is defined by the stone, the dust, the smells, the sounds, the presence or absence of larger creatures, and the constant, simple need to survive one more day. Curled in your safe crevice, you are sheltered from the vastness outside, from the desert night, from the cosmic ideas that drive the humans who built this place. You are just a mouse in a mountain of stone, waiting for the sun to rise again, for the sounds of life to return to the silent structure. The pyramid stands, and within it, tiny lives like yours continue their ancient, quiet existence, adapting to the world built by giants. And now, as the sounds of the ancient construction fade and the vast stone monument settles into the deep quiet of the desert night, let your own breath deepen, feeling the cool, still air around you, the weight of your own body settling into your bed, far, far away from the dust and the echoing passages. The tiny mouse is safe now, curled deep within its stone sanctuary, its struggles and triumphs of the day giving way to the simple need for rest. The colossal pyramid stands sentinel outside, a silent guardian under the ancient stars, its work paused for the night, its secrets held close within its heart of stone. You are safe too, surrounded by the soft comfort of your own space. The echoes of the past grow fainter now, drifting away on the edges of your awareness. There is only the quiet, the stillness, and the gentle rhythm of your own breathing. Let go of the day, Let go of the thoughts. Just rest, drift, relax.